Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 982 of the Juicebox Podcast. Laura is 22 years old. She was diagnosed, I believe, around her 17th birthday with no history of autoimmune in her family. She was in the French Navy when she was diagnosed. The French Navy, but she lives in Texas. None of this makes sense. You'll find out more by listening. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. When you head to my link, omnipod.com/juicebox, there's an option down there to take a test drive of the Omnipod. You can check it out for free in your home. omnipod.com/juicebox. Save 40% at cozyearth.com with the offer code juicebox at checkout. That's off your entire order, by the way, 40%. Juicebox at checkout. And don't forget to check out. I've said that word too much, but go take a look at juiceboxpodcast.com. It's the website for the podcast, and there's a bunch of stuff there. I think you will enjoy it. Just go look, would you? Don't make me ask you over and over. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour Next Gen Blood Glucose Meter. contournext.com/juicebox. You want easy to use? You want accurate? You want Contour. contournext.com/juicebox. If you want to take ownership of your health, it starts today with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. That's at my link, drinkag1.com/juicebox. AG1 is sponsoring this episode of the podcast, and they're sponsoring me too in my belly because I take it every day. And you could too. drinkag1.com/juicebox.
So my name is Laura. I am 22. I live in Texas, and I'm originally from a small Caribbean island lost called Guadeloupe, which is French. But I've been in the US for 3.5 years now. And I have been a type 1 since I was 17, or 2 days before my 17th birthday.
So 5 years with type 1, 3 years.
Yeah, almost 6 years now.
Almost 6 years, 3 years in the US.
Yes.
And you're from an island that, even though you said the name of it, I don't know what you're talking about. Spell it for me.
It's called Guadeloupe, Guadeloupe. It's near, you most likely know St. Martin.
Oh, I do know this.
If you know St. Martin, it's a part of Guadeloupe, so it's right next to it.
Oh, that's so interesting. We normally, if we go there, we go to St. John. Or
yeah, it's one of the islands nearby.
Yeah, we just don't make it to the. Is that the British-owned side, St. Martin?
It's St. Martin. So St. Martin is Dutch and St. Martin is French. So the island, it's a small rock divided in two.
I see. A small rock divided in two.
Yeah, the north side is French and the south side is Dutch.
Oh, that's interesting. And so you were born there?
Yes, I was born and raised for 9-10 years, and then I moved to France for middle school and high school.
Okay.
Got diagnosed in high school and then moved back to Guadeloupe.
Did your parents, how were you born on a tiny island like that? Were they from there?
Well, it's let's say it's as big as Kauai.
Okay.
If you've been to Kauai, that's the closest I can explain.
Mm-hmm. But did your parents?
So it's not that small. But.
See, you got stuck on the size thing. I was trying to find out if you were like, don't insult the island. It's not that small. But it's no. I just mean, like, were your parents native to the island, or did they move there as adults?
No, my dad was. Both of my parents were born in France, but my dad was raised in Tahiti, and once he finished high school and his military service, he decided that he was no longer going to live in France because he hated the cold. So he moved to the Caribbean, and that's where my parents met.
That sounds much nicer. Yeah. Good for him and all the people who have the nerve to do the things that the rest of us talk about and don't do. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He moved there, I think, in the 93, 95,
Right.
and he's been there since then.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay. So you are in France when you're diagnosed?
I was in France when I was diagnosed. Yes, I was in senior year of high school.
Okay. And how did that happen? How did you figure out you had type 1?
So I was actually an athlete. I was swimming twice a day, 20 to 25 hours a week. So I was in a good shape. I was not what people would think someone with diabetes would look like.
Mm-hmm.
I was a swimmer, and I was also in the Navy. I was at school technically for the Navy. So every 2 to 3 weekends a year, every Saturday, I would go to a school where everybody would join for the Navy and would just learn stuff that you usually learn in Navy. So my goal was to join the Navy, which didn't happen.
Okay.
So that was around, I think the whole thing started during the summer of 2016. I was a Girl Scout and spent a few weeks just camping in the woods. And obviously we got ticks and everything. And every summer I would just take some antibiotics the doctor would prescribe antibiotics just to make sure I wouldn't get the Lyme disease.
Mm-hmm.
Coming back on it, it was like, that may have been the mistake that made me diabetic. We don't know. There's no way of knowing, but that could have triggered it. So that was in like August, September, and October, November, we have 10 days or 2 weeks of vacation. Spent a week doing a swim camp, swimming at least 4 hours a day, plus some weightlifting and more.
Let me ask you a question, or maybe a couple. So you think that being bit by ticks or taking the antibiotics? What were you
taking the antibiotics? Because usually antibiotics would be for 6 days max, and after that it's too long.
Mm-hmm.
But the doctor itself prescribed me 3 weeks of antibiotics, which could have caused or triggered diabetes, but there's no way of knowing. But it's just a really long time.
Is that something the doctor said to you?
Yes.
About
no. Well, she told me to get on antibiotics for 3 weeks, but she never said, "Oh yeah, that may have been the thing."
Okay.
But looking back, I was fine before that. I was completely fine, and 2.5 months after, I was in a hospital.
So holding down your concern, I think, is holding down your immune system with the antibiotics, and then maybe you're thinking you got a virus after that, or
I really don't know. I don't remember being sick.
Right. It's interesting. It's different. Is there any type 1 through your family line?
No one. Literally no one. And the week of my diagnosis was also diabetes month is in November. So that's when I was diagnosed. And it was also the actual week where a bunch of associations and groups would get together to spread their awareness. And my grandparents were shocked that I was diagnosed, and they both went to the local supermarket to get tested, and they were like, "Our blood sugars were fine at 11 a.m., so it's not from us." Yeah, don't worry.
I love your grandparents are out like, we need to get out of this. They're going to look to us first. We have to prove it isn't us. My blood sugar is fine. Leave me alone.
Yeah, no, less than a week after, they called me and they're like, "Well, we just got tested and we're fine." I was like, "Yeah, I know."
How about, that's funny. How about other autoimmune stuff like celiac or anything?
Absolutely not. Literally, I had no idea what celiac was before I moved to the US.
Okay.
I feel like more people have those kind of food allergies or intolerances in the US than in France.
Not thyroid issues?
Nope, nothing. Absolutely nothing. I know right now that my other grandpa has type 2 diabetes and is getting the pills, but he's completely against them.
He's rebelling against the pills?
Oh yeah, he's fully rebellious. He's a hunter, and so he's like, "I don't care. I hunt what I eat, and I'm fine. It's fine. I'll just get those pills and keep eating my sugary stuff or sweet stuff every day." I was like, "Cool, yeah."
Do you think he'll take it seriously at any point?
No.
You're like, "No, I'm pretty certain he won't."
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's think. 17, 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Yeah. So I was at a swim camp, and I mean, was tired obviously because we were swimming a lot,
Hmm.
and literally got off the swim camp, took a train to go to my Navy school, spent a couple days at Navy school, went to my cousin's house because it was also, I mean, it's still holidays, so couldn't go back home. My mom was working. And that's when I remember my first symptoms were that I would wake up in the middle of the night to drink, which was really unusual.
Hmm.
And it was a small vacation house, so it was really loud for me to go from my bedroom downstairs to go to the bathroom and get some water. So I would just end up sleeping on the couch and waking up every couple hours to go to the bathroom and go drink, and go to the bathroom and go drink. And I wouldn't sleep for days because I was just up all night long.
How long did this go on for?
Well, that was just the end of vacation. So probably 3, 4, 5 days.
Okay.
Then I went back home and I told my mom, I was like, hey, it's kind of weird. Like, I don't know what's going on. And went back to school. I would sleep through all of my classes. I was a really good student, like straight A student. I may have been a bit annoying for teachers because I knew what I had to do and I was getting good grades. So I wasn't really listening.
Mm-hmm.
I was like a bit of a troublemaker, but I still had good grades. So they didn't really have much to say, but I would just sleep through the whole classes, go to the bathroom every 30 minutes to fill up my whole water bottle and just drink it and chug it all day long. A week after I went back from holidays. We had a huge swim meet in our city. And my mom talked to my mom is a physical therapist, but she had no idea what diabetes was.
Okay.
She talked to one of her colleagues and she said, well, you might want to order some blood tests because that's not normal. So I was over the weekend, and during that weekend, there was one morning where I didn't swim, stayed at home, watched a movie. And in the 2-hour time frame of watching a movie, I drank 2.5 liters of water, which is probably 3/4 of a gallon.
Right.
It was just by laying in bed and drinking.
Just drinking it.
Which was not good. So next day we go to the doctor's office, get a prescription. On a Tuesday, I do a blood test in the morning on an empty stomach without having breakfast. And in the afternoon, the lab calls my mom right away. And they're like, blood sugar is not good. Mm-hmm. You need to go to your doctor's office right now. Wow. So I'm at school. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, let me just take the bus, go to her office, which was right next to the doctor's. Go to the doctor's office, and she's like, yeah, it's a bit elevated. So by the way, same doctor that told me to get antibiotics for 3 weeks.
Right.
She's like, well, it's a bit, I was at 322. And she's like, it's a bit too much. So let's try sugar-free diet for a month and figure it out.
Yeah, she doesn't seem like she knows what she's doing at anything so far.
Yes. Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, let's just do that. So Wednesday morning, I tried to do a sugar-free with big quotes in between because it was granola and milk, which we know now is definitely not sugar-free.
What did you think of as sugar-free in that moment? What were you trying to eat?
Well, the thing is, being an athlete, I was eating really, really lean food. It was really simple, absolutely no fast food. That was not a thing in our house.
Right.
I knew I had to have protein, carbs, and veggies at each meal. No sweets, no drinks, of course. It was really like the simplest meals you could have. That's what I was having already. Except maybe cereals in the morning and maybe pancakes on the weekend.
Right.
But really simple meal. So I go to school Wednesday morning and my mom calls the school's nurse. And she's like, well, yeah, that's not good. So she called me into her office at 11:30 just to get my blood tested before I went to lunch. And I was at 4:57 at 11 a.m. So she looked at me and she's like, you've got your bags, right? I'm like, yep, I was in German. I'm going into math right now. And she's like, no, you're not. I'm calling 911 right now. You are going to the ER. And just like that, 2 days before my birthday, in between 2 classes, I was rushed to the ER. And was diagnosed.
How did you feel at that point, just physically? Still tired, but everything else was okay?
Extremely tired. I had lost a lot of weight. That was, even right now, I'm still not back to that weight. I've never been that light since I was probably like 12. I lost, I think in total was 12, so let's say 20 to 25 pounds in 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh. How tall are you?
I'm 5'4", but I was an athlete, so it was mostly muscles, and right. I just couldn't do anything.
Did no one mention that? Because you're in a bathing suit a lot. Did no one say you're losing?
No, actually, it was like, oh yeah, you're looking much better now. Like you're losing weight. That's great.
Oh,
like,
I see.
Cool. That was the mentality, like what people would say is just like, oh yeah, you need to lose weight. You need to look better in the swimsuit. So yeah, it was great.
Oh, I see.
And
I see.
For a few days before I was diagnosed, I didn't go to practice. I would text my coach every single day. I was like, hey, I'm sorry, I don't feel good. And he would just come back at me like, yeah, you don't want to swim. Like, you think you can go to the French championship without practicing? And he would just bash me until the day I got diagnosed. And he was like, I am so sorry. Yeah. I should not have said that to you.
Were you able to get back to swimming?
I did. Not for long, but I did. I actually broke my own personal record 2 months after being diagnosed.
Wow.
Without swimming for 2 months.
Yeah. Maybe your body just needed a break.
Yeah, I just was jumping in the pool and break my own record. So I was like, all right, cool.
So when you
actually don't need to practice.
When you said you wanted to be in the Navy, you were trying to be in the French Navy? As you heard earlier, this episode of the podcast is sponsored by the Contour Next Gen blood glucose meter. But when you get a Contour meter, what you're really getting is their test strips. Contour Next test strips feature remarkable accuracy as part of the Contour Next blood glucose monitoring system. They're the #1 branded over-the-counter test strips. And they, of course, have second chance sampling. Second chance sampling can help you to avoid wasted strips. ContourNext.com/juicebox. Near the top of the page, you'll see a Buy Now button. It's bright yellow. When you click on that, you'll get 8 options of places online to buy Contour meters and test strips. Walmart.com, Amazon, Walgreens, CVS Pharmacy, Meijer, Kroger, Target, Rite Aid. These are all links you'll find at my link. Linkity link. Links but a link, blink, blink, link. I'm just kidding. Head over there. Now, won't you please? Listen, the Contour meters are incredibly accurate. They are simple to use. They are easy to hold, easy to read, and they have a bright light for nighttime testing. Part of me wants to say that the second chance sampling is the biggest deal, but honestly, it's the accuracy. These meters are accurate. And I know a lot of people like to think, well, I have a CGM. I don't need a meter. You do. You need a meter. You need to be accurate. You deserve it to be accurate. ContourNext.com/juicebox. Take a look at the Contour Next Gen and the other meters available from Contour. When you use my links, you're supporting the production of the show and helping to keep it free and plentiful. I take AG1 every morning, and you could too. Every morning I take my container, my AG1 container, I put a scoop of AG1 in it and some cold water, I give it a good shake, and I drink it down. I take AG1 every morning, and you could too. When I was looking for a green drink, I heard about AG1 on a different podcast, and now you're hearing about it from me. So circle of life kind of thing. Anyway, AG1 is a science-driven formulation of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food source nutrients. And AG1 is raising the standard for quality in the supplement category. It helps you build your health foundation first. Let's build a nice solid foundation with AG1. Drink AG1.com/juicebox. AG1 is a foundational nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. And in fact, since 2010, they've improved this formula 52 times. That's called wanting to do better every day. And you can do better every day too. Drink AG1.com/juicebox. So if you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com drinkag1.com/juicebox. That's drinkag1.com/juicebox. When you use the links, you're supporting the production of the podcast and keeping it free and plentiful.
Yes.
Okay. And with type 1 diabetes, that's not possible?
Well, I was diagnosed during that year. I spent a year going like every Saturday or every other Saturday and one full week on a Navy base during the year.
Mm-hmm.
And so started in September, ended in May, June, and I was diagnosed in November of that year. So technically I started and I was okay. And I was pretty good at it. I really enjoyed it. My goal was literally to enroll and be a we call it a Marine, be a Navy officer.
Mm-hmm.
So my commandant told me, like, I know you have diabetes, but it's just cool. I am not going to let you go right now because you're one of the best ones. And I know you enjoy it and we enjoy having you. So I'll go against what policies say because you started and you are fine.
So he was trying to let you work it out and see if you could do it.
Yeah. And I told him right away, I was like, now I know what to do. It's fine. I mean, I didn't know exactly what to do. I had just been diagnosed. So
yeah.
But I finished my year. I still enrolled in an officer school that was it was a 3-year school. And basically the dude on the phone was like, oh, I saw you have diabetes on your paper. I was like, yeah, but I'm fine now. Like at that time I had a pump already.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, I'm managing everything. Doctor said it was fine. And he was like, oh yeah, but I called the Navy doctor and he said that we're not able to get diabetic people. So I put your paperwork in the trash. So you're not going to be in the Navy. Thank you. Bye. And he hung up the phone.
Jeez. How old are you at that moment?
I was just 17 and not even, just 17.
Wow. And this is the only thing you would consider doing as an adult, right?
Yes. Yeah. That was my only plan. That was back in March, the year after. I was like, okay, well, I've been diagnosed 5 months ago. My goal is to go in the Navy. I'm graduating in a couple months and I do not know what to do.
Sure. Are you able to pivot away from that and find something else, or was that a struggle?
Yeah, well, at that point I was still in France and my dad and my brother were in Guadeloupe in the Caribbean. So I told my mom, I was like, well, I'm going to go back and I'll do, I think it was a tourist, like to work in tourism, like go to school and it'll be fine. I'll just go back to what I know in Guadeloupe and I'll just do that and work in tourism. But it lasted a month and I was like, yeah, that's not for me. So after a month of school, I quit. And so that was like in October 2018, not even a year after being diagnosed. I was like, yeah, I'm done with school. I'm not doing that again.
Okay. So you graduated from, I don't know what they would call it in France, but from high school?
Yeah.
Okay. But then college, not going to do that.
Yeah, I did a month and I was like, no, not going to happen.
Okay. I guess I have a couple of questions. Where do you get your supplies from when you're jumping around from country to country? Like, is that an easy transition? Like, I'm in France, I'm getting diabetes supplies. I'm going to go back to the island. Now I'm getting them here. Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, it's kind of a struggle. So technically right now I am a student, an international student on a visa. Mm-hmm. So I'm still French. I'm just here for a little while for my studies. And the plan is technically to go back to France, which is not going to happen. But
we'll tell them about that later.
Yeah. Well, I just married 3.5 weeks ago and US citizen. So.
Oh, wait. Okay. So it's so funny because, when you start speaking and I hear your accent and then you're like, I'm in Texas. I think I can't wait to find out how she made it to Texas. And,
it's a fun story with a bunch of circumstances that made me end up here.
Yeah. Let me ask you before we get into it. What was your level of training and education around diabetes when you were diagnosed? And was this a thing that your parents were involved in, or did it fall to you immediately?
I had absolutely no idea what it was. My mom saying she had heard about it, but knew nothing about it until, a few days after diagnosis. So I was still in the ER and pediatric ER because I was still technically 16.
Mm-hmm.
So it was actually really funny because the school had called the ER that I was coming in, and me with my school bag on my shoulder, just walking into the ER, and they were waiting for me because at that point I was at 457. It was pretty high, and they just opened all doors for me, and I walked through the ER and didn't stop and got admitted right away. When you could see just toddlers and babies and throwing ups and crying in the waiting room, and I was fine. I was just walking in. And so all of the parents got angry, obviously, seeing that someone just would walk in and get admitted right away, but it's invisible. So they had no idea that I was on the verge of going into DK.
Mm-hmm. How long did you stay in the hospital for?
It was really long because I stayed for a full week.
Like 7 days?
Yeah, okay. I went in on a Wednesday, got out on a Wednesday.
Did they teach you anything valuable while you were there, or were they just...
Absolutely not.
Oh, okay.
That's the worst. So the Friday was my birthday, November 11th, and it's a day off in France. So in the hospitals, you had no doctors, only nurses.
Mm-hmm.
And technically, the doctor is teaching me, not the nurses. So the nurses would just keep me alive for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I had technically only the Thursday of learning-ish, and then nothing for 3 days. I would just lay in bed and do nothing for 3 days. That's why it took so long for me to get out of the hospital, because I just had to wait for the doctor to come back.
So you had to stay for the first 3 days just so the doctor could take their weekend, and then...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy how it works.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So by the time you're there 4 days before somebody really even starts to talk to you about it.
Yeah. I remember doing my first shot myself on the Thursday. So less than 24 hours after being admitted, I was doing my first shot. My mom was with me. I think, that was the one and only shot that she ever gave me was in the hospital, and she didn't do anything after that.
No kidding. How long?
So I was left to do everything myself.
When you get out of the hospital, do you think you're honeymooning at that point?
I was not. I had no idea what honeymoon was.
Okay.
Like usually, they didn't teach me anything. The doctor was like, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're getting 8 units. Snack, you're getting 4 units. That's it.
Okay, so they gave you an amount of insulin to shoot. Did they give you a number of carbs to eat?
Oh, no, absolutely. I had no idea what that was.
Oh. In a week?
That's how French, diagnosis is, how crazy that is. It just, I had to be admitted again for a full week for them to figure out my insulin to carb ratio.
Oh, you had to
I had to be admitted for a full week for that.
Wait, so you were there for a week. You ended up back in the hospital?
I should have, but I didn't because I never had the time for that.
Okay. But in a full week, they came up with an insulin to carb ratio for you?
No, they came up with a number for me to just give myself for every meal.
And that's it.
They hadn't said anything about... I didn't know the difference between carbs and sugar.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was just no sugar, but not carbs.
So then where do you learn about this? Is it a private, outside of the hospital with a doctor eventually, or do you figure it out on your own? It was mostly
when I moved here to the US. I went to see a dietitian and I had to get blood tested and stuff. And that's when she told me, you can change your insulin every single meal depending on what you eat. Oh. And I was like, what? I don't have to have 8 units every single time?
Laura, how many years is that you lived like that?
Probably 2 years.
And what kind of technology did you have in those first 2 years?
I had the because I was swimming a lot, I decided to jump on the Omnipod right away. So in 2 months after being diagnosed, I went back to the hospital for a week so they could teach me how to use it and monitor me for a week or 5 days, I guess.
Well, that seems excessive too. But I mean, did you need to be? Maybe you did need to be there. Was that helpful? The second week where they taught you how to use the pump?
Well, it was mostly for the pump. It was still not for
management ideas.
Yeah, it was mostly to find out my basal rate. Okay. But every other week, I'll be back at the doctor's office to change some stuff so she could look at my graphs and be like, well, you're swimming from that time to that time, so we're gonna do a low basal like a couple hours before, so you don't drop low. Obviously, I was still dropping low in the middle of practice.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of a pain. But yeah, I was on the Omnipod for 2 months after diagnosis, and I'm still on the pod right now.
Okay.
And I was still doing fingerprints.
I have one question about that for clarification for me. So when you go to the hospital to learn how to use the pump, do you live at the hospital for a week?
Yes, full time.
Is that common?
In France, yes, that's how it works.
Okay.
That is crazy. Now that I know that like 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds here, just someone comes home and comes at the house and explain to them how the pump works, change the settings, and then you're good to go. Like I had to stay from Sunday night to Friday midday.
Yeah. Laura, you could have called me. I could have got your basal set up for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's okay. So now you have the pump. And I'm assuming your basal is perfect since they spent 7 days getting it set up. But
absolutely not. It was crazy because I was swimming and then I was at home and I was eating a lot because I was moving so much that I had on the days that I was swimming in the morning, I would wake up around 5:30, have a small breakfast, swim from 6 to 8, have another breakfast, be at school from 8:30 to 5:30 p.m., have lunch in between. Then after school, I had another snack. Then I would go back in the pool from 6 to 8 p.m. and then have dinner afterwards. So I would eat like 6 times a day.
Were you getting low or high a lot?
I really don't remember much, but I just remember having half of my backpack being just candies and snacks and juices and crackers that I
didn't want.
That I had to have, but I couldn't eat whenever I wanted.
Right. Wow. So, geez. And you're testing just with a finger stick at this point. Are you actually testing? Frequently testing your blood sugar with?
Oh yeah. My fingers were destroyed.
Okay. So you were testing.
Yeah, I was checking like probably at least 8 to 10 times a day.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So you live like that for 2 years, and you're living at home at that point with your mom?
Yeah, I was with my mom until the next summer, so less than a year. Then I moved back to Guadeloupe for a few months, and in January I decided to go for 6 months in Toronto, Canada, and live in a host family. That's what we call them.
Sure.
Go to school in the morning and just live with a family in the afternoon, and that's what I did for 6 months, and that's actually where and how I learned English.
Really? You just picked up English a couple of years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Is that why at the beginning, before we started recording, you said you hope people can understand you?
I know, like, as soon as I introduce myself to people, just like friends that don't know me or family friends, like, oh, hi. I'm like, oh, where are you from? Like, I just said hi. How would you know that I'm not from here?
Well, we can hear, but it's not that, but I understand everything you're saying, just so you know.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. I've not had any moment where I thought, I don't know what she's talking about. So you go to Toronto, and then where do you head after that?
I went to Toronto for 6 months, then went back home, helped my dad. Like, he had a business, so I walked with him. I walked in a scuba diving center, literally just down the street from my house. Mm-hmm. That was actually pretty great because I learned English, so now I could speak English to clients, like, and walked in that business for a few months.
Do you know what your A1Cs are in those first years?
I think I was in the 8th.
In the 8th. Okay.
I got the Libre in June, like 9 months after being diagnosed. That's when the French government decided to cover it. So I had the Libre 1 in June.
They didn't make you go to the hospital for a week to learn how to use it, did they?
Not that one.
Okay.
Luckily, I was fine with that one. But that helped a lot because I was waking up really in the morning, being in the 300s. And my doctor thought that I was getting low in the middle of the night without knowing it. And my body would just counteract it and got high. But no, it's just my basal was completely messed up.
Right. Well, they probably just needed a couple of more days to figure it out. They would have got it all straight. I'm sure if you would have just stayed for 14 days, I think they would have gotten it all right.
Oh, yeah. They would have. I mean, my high school was hating me because every other week I would be gone.
Yeah, that's insane. Well, okay. So, and just for clarification, not because it matters, your mom and dad are not together?
No, they're not.
Okay. All right, now.
No, they're not. So I got diagnosed in November. In December for Christmas, I went to Guadeloupe to see my dad and my brother. And the first thing that my dad said was, "Why are you giving yourself insulin before you eat when you don't know what you're going to eat?" I was like, I don't know. That's what he told me.
Well,
and he was like, why don't you just see what you eat and dose after? I was like, I guess I could try, and I would just shoot up. It's like, I had no idea. I was just trying.
Yeah, you really didn't have any direction whatsoever.
Yeah, I didn't know what pre-bolusing was until a couple years ago.
Yeah, I definitely find that there's that age right around 18 when parents and even doctors can think, oh, they're old enough, they can do it. And meanwhile, you don't know what you're doing. And it's not like you're going to go home and sit down and figure it out or go online. It's just you're going to do what you're told, and as long as you're not passing out, you're going to think you're okay. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I my mom had the only thing she would do or mostly say was, "What's your blood sugar? What's your blood sugar?" Like 20 times a day, and that pissed me off really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not fun.
And my dad had. Still now, he has no idea how my diabetes life is going, what my pod, Dexcom, insulin is. Like, he has no clue.
How does that feel that the people around you that are close to you don't understand anything about something that you're existing with constantly?
I'm used to it now, I guess. So it just doesn't bother me. I don't live with them. I haven't seen my dad in 3.5 years. So it's fine. They're far away. They don't know. But my husband, for example, he follows my Dexcom. He changes my pod. He knows like when I'm high, when I'm low, what to do. So he's the closest to me. So he manages it with me, which is pretty great.
Okay.
But my parents live so far away. It doesn't seem useful
for them to even understand it. Yeah. Well, how did you make it to America?
Well, after Toronto, I went back home, and I had a friend who was like, "Hey, it's pretty cool what you're doing in Toronto. Like you just live in a family for free. You go to school, and you just live your best life." I'm like, "Yeah, that's pretty sweet." So she's like, "Well, how do I do that?" I was like, "Well, if you want to do it, there's a program called Au Pair, which is a living nanny coming from abroad that you could do in the US for at least a year. And then if you want to stay a bit longer, you can stay for 2 years." And she's like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. But if I do that, you come with me." I was like, "Yeah, sure. Okay, let's do it." So just like that, I did my paperwork. And I think it was like 7 or 8 months after coming back from Toronto, I was back to the US.
Laura, your personality is more like your father's?
I think so, yeah. He's more like, "You want to try something? Go for it." My mom's like, "Why would you do that? Like, but why do you want to do that? You shouldn't have to do that." I was like, I want to. Like, why not?
No, I see you've kind of got just wanderlust a little bit. And I mean, it seems like that's how your dad was like, "I don't like this anymore. I'm going to go all the way over here now." And
absolutely. And my dad has one of my dad's dream when I was little was to live in the US. So we came to the US, mostly Florida, for a while, like on and off, just so we could live here and he could learn English and figure out like how it worked. But because of 9/11, visas were much harder to get. So he couldn't do that.
I see.
So that's why when I told him, "Hey, I want to go to the US for a year or two," he was like, "Okay, cool."
Yeah, he was excited. Yeah, right. Well, okay. And then you make it, so being an au pair, so your friend's going to be an au pair, you go along with her. Are you an au pair as well?
Yes.
Okay. And
so
you land in Texas?
I end up in San Francisco.
Okay.
Right next to San Francisco.
Right.
She ends up in Los Angeles, which is far, but still close for the US. And we just go about our lives, and that's actually a pretty sweet life. It's basically you live in a house. You are paid not that much, but you're still paid weekly. You work for the family, and you just enjoy your life.
And in the time you're working, you're looking after kids or making meals or things like that?
Yeah, the whole goal is to look after kids. So I lived in different families throughout the program, and I had in each family, I had 3 kids to look after. So from babies to teenagers, I'm like, well, okay, let's go to dance practice, go to school, go to the doctors, go to the playground. And it just, that was my life for basically 2 years.
Okay. Did you find that a good experience?
It depends for who, but I think if it's for the right people, it's amazing.
Okay.
Like I would never be and do what I'm doing right now if it wasn't for those 2 years that I spent alone, just learning about myself.
So you had enough free time to be introspective, and you didn't really have to make too much money because I'm assuming you were driving their cars and living in their house and things like that.
Yeah, the whole program, it's a stipend. It's not really a pay. It's a stipend of just a bit less than $200 a week.
Okay.
We do work up to 45 hours a week though, but
there's very few things you actually need that aren't being provided for.
I didn't need to pay for anything, but for like travels that I wanted to do, any personal stuff, I would pay myself. But the phone, the car, the house, the bills, everything was paid for.
Yeah, no, that's a great time of life to do something like that. And the organization you did it with was reputable, and you had a good experience.
Yes, to come to the US, you have to go through an agency that sponsors a visa. If you don't have that, you cannot come to the US. So yeah, the agency took care of my flights, my insurance,
and then placed
basically
you.
Everything.
Did you move through a lot of families in 2 years, or did you stay pretty much with
I did. I moved through, I worked for 4 families in total. And I loved it. I'm not good at staying in one place or doing the same thing all over again for a long time.
Right.
So it was great to just change town. And actually, my first 3 families were in the Bay Area, so it was really close. But I changed the kids. They were younger, older. The schedule was different. The activities were different. So it worked great for me. I know some people hate it, but I absolutely loved it.
Any kids you didn't like?
Not the kids. The kids were always great. It was never the kids' fault. It was mostly the parents' fault. If something went wrong, it was because of the parents.
Okay. They treat you like they owned you, or they just weren't thoughtful, or how did it go wrong?
It depends on the family. On the families, like the last couple of families were amazing with me and treated me like a human being, an adult, and not like a toddler in their house. But the first one I was just a maid for them. The kids, it was not the kids' fault. I love those kids, but I had to switch families because they were overworking me, and I didn't have a life. And because of diabetes, I couldn't eat when I wanted. I couldn't eat what I wanted. I had an awful schedule, and I would sleep less, and I would not sleep, and I would stop eating, and it was just not livable. So I was like, well, for my own health, physical and mental, we need to do something.
And for health insurance during this time period, how did you get that?
Through the agency, they provide us with health insurance through Aetna.
Okay. Wow.
Which paid for everything.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, actually. But I guess the one downside of it is you're not able to amass any savings.
I did, actually.
Oh, wow.
I'm not a big spender. Like, I'm not going shopping every day. I'm not going to I don't go to Starbucks or stuff like that. So I was able to keep a bunch of money and travel a lot. Like, in 2 years, I think I visited 15 or 16 states.
No kidding.
So right, I lived my best life. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds, I mean, the way you're talking about it, I feel like you're 50, but you're 22. So
that's what a lot of people tell me. I have a old soul.
Yeah. You're getting a lot accomplished too in a short amount of time. All right. Where do you meet this boy that you marry? Where does this happen?
I met him through mutual friends in the Bay Area. He was at school in right like 20, 25 minutes away from where I was living. Funny enough, I met him on Bumble, and on one of his pictures, I saw someone that I knew. Like, oh, that's weird. Why do I know that guy on this dude's profile? Yeah, on Bumble. And so we started talking, and yeah, now we are married.
Wow. Laura, I got to tell you, Bumble's the first word. I wasn't certain what you were saying, but I figured it out.
Oh, sorry.
Don't be sorry. I'm like, what is she saying? I'll get it. And there it was. So you met him through friends, but on an app, you noticed him in a picture with somebody that you knew?
On his profile,
his
I was
profile.
scrolling through his pictures and I was like, hey, on that picture, I know that guy.
Oh, that's funny.
And they ended up being at the same school in the same year, and their dorms were like 2 or 3 rooms apart.
Right. Is he your age?
He's 2 years older.
Okay. So now this is the first thing did you want to get married? Because you seem like you don't want to be tied to something.
Absolutely not. Like, I moved here, I was like, I'm just going to live my best life. And I was in a state of mind, like, before coming to the US, where I'm like, I don't fit in any boxes that people want me to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go to school after high school. I didn't want to just settle in my parents' village. I didn't want to have the small car that everybody has. I was dreaming big. I was like, I want to have a big SUV. I want to have a big house. I want to have a boat. And I was like, I'm not doing that stuck in France in a small village. That it's just not working.
Interesting. Okay. So does a job take him to Texas?
Yes. So we were together for quite a while in California, and then he finished college just during the pandemic. So finished his last semester at home online.
Mm-hmm.
And that same friend that was on his Bumble profile moved to Texas a year ahead of him and got a job here. And he was like, well, they're looking for engineers here, so why don't you come down and apply for a job? So he applied, planned on moving. And I was like, well, if you're moving there, I might as well find another family and just move there with you. So go on Facebook, and I find that family that lives 20 minutes away from where he was going to live. Their family name is exactly the same as his. The mom is a nurse, and their 8-year-old is also a type 1 diabetic.
We're not going to say your last name out loud, but the last name that I'm seeing is your married name?
No, that's not.
It's not. Okay. You have the most Caucasian name for a lady who's got such an interesting background. Really, like your name's like right out of a 1950s TV show. And
oh yeah,
yeah, it's just such a simple name. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is this: you're doing all this, not having a great grasp of how you're supposed to be taking care of yourself. So, at what point during this process did you start figuring out, I don't know enough about diabetes?
Mostly when I moved to Texas to that family with a mom who's a nurse.
A nurse, okay.
And the kid who was 8, type 1 diabetic, and he was diagnosed at 5.
Mm-hmm.
And he was diagnosed just a few months after me.
Okay. And so did they come to you, or did you notice that, like, wow, they do this differently than I do, or did they say something to you?
From the beginning, I had talked to them and I had met them. I took a weekend trip to Texas just to meet them. And so the kid had the Dexcom, which I was still on a Libre. I was like, it's amazing that you can have it on your phone every 5 minutes and you don't have to scan it to
mm-hmm.
know your blood sugar.
Right.
And the mom was getting his alerts on her phone when he was at school, at daycare. He was just like, the mom's like, yeah, I know his blood sugar from wherever I am. It's like, it's amazing. He had also the Omnipod, same as me. So I was like, well, if you need help with that, I know how to change it. I know how to bolus. I know how to do all of that.
I see.
And yeah, we had lunch together. And at the end of the lunch, he was like, yeah, we would really love to have you with us for however long.
Right. And then, so while you're together with this child, you guys are managing together a little bit?
Yeah, so when he was not at school, I was managing his blood sugar. So it was like, he had kind of a different approach to bolusing, or the parents had. Mm-hmm. The mom knew exactly how much units he needed for each plate that he was eating, and not how many grams of carbs it was.
I see.
So she would look at a plate and she's like, 2.5.
And just like, and you weren't even doing that much, right? You were.
And no, I wanted to learn from them how to carb count. I was like, well, teach me. And she was like, we don't. It's like, oh, well, guess I need to go to doctors and find out. But because she was a nurse and she had a type 1 kid, she had an endocrinologist office in her building. Mm-hmm. So one day she was like, well, we're going to drop the kids off at school. You're coming with me, and I'm going to get you an appointment with the best endocrinologist in my building.
And then you'll learn that way. And that's how you learned from this endocrinologist.
That's how I mostly learned, also from them, that it was not about sugar, it was about carbs. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I still didn't know that protein and fat had to be bolus form. I learned it on the podcast like less than a year ago.
How did you find the podcast after all this?
I found a Facebook group first. I was not that much into listening to podcasts at all. Actually, I was not at all until a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. But my husband is a big podcast fan, and he started listening to it. I was like, hey, you should listen to it. You would learn a lot. I was like, yeah, but I don't know when, and I don't know how, and I was not really tech savvy. So I was like,
So Laura, your husband's listening to the podcast?
Yes.
For you or to try to learn?
A bit of both,
okay.
I think. I didn't really ask him, but he would listen to the pro tips and it was like, hey, I heard that. Like, just listen to the podcast and tell me what you think. It's like, okay, cool. I'll listen to it. And he left for work this morning, and I told him, like, hey, listen to the new one that just came out. It's a pretty fun story. Like, you'll like it.
Wow, that's amazing. So he's trying to find a way to help you. He finds the podcast. You don't necessarily want to dive into it too much. But how long have you been listening? Because you had to sign up to record this like 6 months ago.
Actually, no. I emailed you.
Oh, Laura, you're the one. You are the lucky. Laura is the lucky one in 2022. You really are. That's the time frame that wasn't making sense to me. You got a link and someone canceled, and there was 1 day left.
Actually, I was double lucky then, because you sent me the link and you're like, well, it's not before like June 2023. I was like, oh, that's fine. I can just wait. It's fine. And I go on the link. I was like, hey, there's an appointment for that day, which was actually yesterday.
Yes.
But I'm at school and it's at 8 a.m. and I have class at 9. Like, it's just not going to work. So I was like, well, I'm just going to wait and I'll figure out later. And then a week later, I go back on the link and I see that there's a slot for today. I'm like, well, I don't have school on Wednesdays. Let's do it.
You are parked on my pack. This was going to be my packing day because we're taking Arden to college in a few days. And when the person canceled, I was like, I'm not going to fill that. But I also didn't go back and block it. So when I saw you take the time, I was like, that's fine. We'll do that. That's why. Okay, this makes better sense now. So you're just starting with the podcast, really?
Yes, I started. Well, I think the first actual podcast, I listened to it a year ago. But I wasn't really into listening to stuff at that point. It's easier for me to read it or see it. So it's hard to just listen to a podcast, and I didn't have time. I didn't know how, or mostly when or where to listen to those podcasts. So I was like, well, I'm just going to go on a run, and it would be not that long, like 10, 15 minutes, and then I would be done. So I would never end up finishing the podcast.
I see. But your husband listens more frequently.
Right now, yes, because I figured a way to and a time to do it.
Interesting.
So when I go to school, I just put in my car and
there it is.
And there it is, yeah.
Why did you want to come on?
Because the French diagnosis is absolutely awful and so different to what I know now from the US. I'm like,
are you in my private Facebook group?
I'm on the Juicebox Podcast.
You are in there. Okay, so I'm going to look very quickly to see if you're there, because I'm going to say something that. All right, hold on a second.
Yeah, that's how I learned about the whole thing, and now that I know that, I had no idea. I've had the Omnipod for 5.5 years.
Okay.
But I didn't know what extended bolus was. I had never used it.
Right. Okay, so I see you. I see you're here. So do you ever notice online that a person named Isabel helps me with the Facebook group?
I don't really look at the names. Like, with how Facebook is set up right now, you see the group name and then the person's name is so small that I don't even see it anymore. She's
French and she lives in Toronto. And the one thing I'm going to give away a little bit about Isabel, it makes her upset when she hears bad things about Canada. And I've never heard her hear anything bad about France. So I'm wondering what happens when she hears you say this. If it's gonna, she has such a national pride. I feel like, but it's interesting. I think you're the first person I've talked to who was diagnosed in France, and I mean the experience is obviously needs refinement. If your experience is a common experience, it's not great. That's for certain.
Well, that's how it works in France. Like you're diagnosed for, like you stay in the hospital for a week and then you have to go back to get a pump and you have to go back to learn about carb ratio. And I was supposed to do that. Basically, I was scheduled a month after I landed in the US. I was like, well, no, it's not going to work. I'm not going to go back to France for a week to spend it in the hospital.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, this is interesting. So you just
figured everything out myself.
You just wanted to blow up France on the podcast. That's what you were shooting for.
Well, the thing is, I've listened and read so many stories about kids in the US. Like, well, we stayed in the hospital for 3 days. It was awful. I'm like, dude, I stayed there for a week as a 17-year-old. I spent my birthday in a small sterile room with 3 of my family members. My aunt actually made me some sugar-free cupcakes. Oh, it was muffins. I think it was muffins.
For your birthday.
Yeah, and so I had a sugar-free muffin and an applesauce for my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
It was so sad.
Yeah, I bet you it was.
Awfully sad. And my aunt actually gave me 2. So I had one on my birthday and the second one, I kept it on my night table. And I'm still pissed at that because at 4 a.m. when they came to check my blood sugar, they took it away from me and didn't give it back.
Oh my gosh. They stole it. Someone stole it. The only thing you had.
No, I knew it was the nurses because I saw them. They saw it on my nightstand and they were like, oh, she cannot have that here. Like, she cannot eat that. Like, it's sugar-free. And they told me you cannot eat sugar. I was like, it doesn't have sugar in it. Well, it does have carbs, but I didn't know that.
You didn't know that at the time, right? So, oh my God.
Like, where did my muffin go? Like, come on, guys.
They're French muffin thieves. That's exactly what they are.
Yeah, and my aunt also got pissed. She was like, well, I checked online to make sure that you could eat it and there's no sugar in it.
Yeah, and at that time, that's all they were saying to you, sugar, 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 nothing about carbs. Gotcha.
Yep. Well, nothing about carbs and definitely nothing about protein and fats.
Right. What is your A1Cs? What are they like right now?
Right now, I've been at 5'4" for the past year and a half or 2 years.
That's terrific.
Every time I check, I'm 5'4".
That's terrific. What do you think the secret to how it's going is for you?
Just like literally on my phone, on Dexcom, like every 10 minutes.
So you're...
I cannot live without it. It's awful to say, but I cannot live without my phone.
Okay.
Because I'm constantly checking my blood sugar.
Now, are you checking it and finding that it's leaving the range you want to be in and you have to adjust it, or you just feel like you're being vigilant?
Oh, right now, it's perfect. It's a straight line for the past. That's what I said to my husband a couple nights ago. I was like, for the past 2 or 3 days, I have not been high. I have not been low. Like, it's amazing.
It's okay. Are you noticing it different times of the month? Is it different?
Yes. Usually, I'd say a few days before I'm on my period, I run high. I run straight, but I run high. When I say high, it's above like around 160, 180.
Okay.
So I have to rage bolus so I could go down. But as soon as I eat something, it's just like, oh yeah, no, let's just go back up.
It goes once to go back up. And this is before your period. During your period, is it different?
And I run low during.
Okay. And then how about after the period's over?
I think it goes back to normal.
You get a normal range at that point.
Yeah.
You know what? We've just started doing something with Arden where we're choosing her sites for her pump based on where she is in her cycle.
Well, so, I don't have that much choice since I used to put my pod on my arm, my stomach, and my legs. And then I figured out that my arms didn't really work anymore. So I switched to only legs and stomach. Okay. And now my legs don't work anymore. So I have like 4 sites on my stomach around my belly button. And I just switch in a clockwise.
Yeah. Are you over?
I change, I go low, and then I change, I go right low, and then I change, I go high low, high right.
Right. Were you?
And I turn.
Do you think you overuse some of your sites? Do they just need a break?
No, I don't really know, but as soon as I put it on my legs, I know I'm gonna be high. I'm like, I'm just gonna try again,
Yeah.
and yep,
So that's
I'm high.
not uncommon. So some people will use their legs and then use a different basal profile, for instance, a little more aggressive. Arden's legs are her least effective spots. So she gets more out of her arms, back of her arms, and her belly. So we've been using her. So just like you, during her period, her blood sugar is much easier to maintain. So we've been using her legs during her period. And then when the period stops, we're moving to her belly or her arms for ovulation, and belly or arms in that spot right before the period when you start to get that resistance too. Yeah, I just figured why not match up the, how effective the site is with the need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually talking about it last night. I can see so many scars on my stomach now from the pods, especially when those pods like hurt a bit and then they bleed a lot, or they bleed a small amount, but it just leaves that small bruise that's as big as the cannula, basically. And those scars like never go away. So I have like red dots on my stomach, but I know that's the only place that my pod works. I tried to put it on the back of my low back, but it would burn me to a point that it would be itchy, and I had blisters on my back from the pods.
Have you tried? Do you pinch up when you put it on?
Yes.
Okay, and that spot doesn't work for you. Gotcha.
Yeah. So now I'm just I know it works only on my stomach, so I'm fine with it. And I have the Dexcom either on my arms or on my chest.
Okay. When you do your arms with the pod, were you doing the outside facing out or back facing back?
I was facing back, but last time I did my arms was probably 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I stopped that really quickly.
Yeah, when Arden was little, we put it on the back of her arm, but now when she wears it on her arm, she likes it sort of more on the outside of her arm.
Mm-hmm.
Although
I feel like I don't have much going on my arms, like more than it's just bones and skin.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why slowly it just.
Well, you said you haven't put all your weight back on, right?
No, I actually, since I moved to Texas in that family with a diabetic kid, it helped me mentally to get better with my eating habits. So I started losing weight, which was good for me.
Mm. How so? What were your eating habits like before you met the family?
I was not forced, but I forced myself to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, even when I was not hungry. When I moved to that family, they were like, what do you want to eat and when do you want to eat? I was like, well, I'm not hungry. I just want to eat a salad. Right. And the whole family would have pasta and pizza and whatever. And I was like, no, I'm just going to have a salad. And I didn't feel ashamed to eat something else or to be like, well, no, my blood sugar is high. I don't want to eat pizza.
Right. No, good for you. What do you think?
I'm not hungry. I don't want to eat. And that changed a lot also in my mental health, because I was not ashamed of doing something else because of diabetes. Like they understood. As soon as they saw me, they were like, oh yeah, so you were high all night, or you were low all night, or the kid's blood sugar was high all night, so you were also awake all night. And so they gave me a break. They were like, just go sleep the day off and then you're good to go. And it was easier for me to manage it knowing that they knew what I was going through.
So you think that the change for you was meeting people who understood your situation?
Oh yes, because the first families, like, it's not that they understood it, they were okay with it, but they didn't try to help, or they didn't try to understand it better. I'm like, hey, if you do that, is it good or bad? They would just let me figure it out and didn't even ask anything. I'll just tell them it's not contagious. I know how to deal with everything. I know what to do when I'm high. I know what to do when I'm low. I'm not going to show the kids the needles. I'm not going to keep any bloody stuff all over the place. I'm really neat and clean.
And these were all things you were concerned about or worrying about previously.
I didn't know that I was, but yes, looking back, yes, I was not trying to hide it, but I was trying to live the same as everybody else. When, if I'm high, I will not eat pizza now. When before I was like, well, I'm high, but they're all eating pizza, so I'll have to eat pizza.
Is it because you didn't want to be the kid?
obviously,
You didn't want to be the girl with diabetes who couldn't have pizza, so you just had it anyway?
No, because I've always told anyone and everyone, like, yeah, I'm diabetic, and
Okay.
it just, that's who I am. But I didn't want to have them go out of their way to be like, well, we're gonna buy you more salad, or we're gonna buy you like sugar-free stuff.
Okay. No, I think
But
I
when I
understand.
moved here to Texas, they were like, well, yeah, like the first day I went to the grocery store with the dad, and he was like, so we have sugar-free milk. I was like, sorry, what? That is amazing. And we don't have chips. We have that kind of chips because it's low carbs. I was like, oh my God. Like, I need to relearn everything in the grocery store because it's just, there's so much stuff that I had no idea about. And that, yeah, they made me grow up a lot into my diabetes knowledge.
Do you feel like in a kind way they parented you about diabetes?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, first day when the dad took me to the store, and a week after when the mom was like, hey, let me call your insurance to see if you can have the Dexcom. I was like, I'm not even sure. I didn't know how it worked.
Right.
Because the insurance in France is completely different. Here you have to call your insurance and be like, hey, I need this to leave. Would you give it to me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Basically. And
Now that you're married, do you still know that family?
yes.
You do. You maintain a friendship with them.
We moved since then, so we don't live that close from them, but I still text with that diabetic kid and the parents. We're on the group chat together.
That's pretty great. That's pretty great. Well,
he calls me randomly out of nowhere. I was like, oh yeah, we're going to the park. Oh yeah, just had marshmallow ice cream. I was like, oh cool, buddy.
how old is he now?
I think he's 11.
Okay. Wow. Jeez, this is your story is really interesting. It's very different and fascinating to see somebody in a short amount of time go from no real understanding of what they're doing to, a clear understanding of it. It's
it changed a lot when I learned how to do the extended boluses. I was like, oh my God, that's what I needed the whole time. And I didn't know it was right here under my nose.
Yeah. And now you're learning about fat and protein and things like that.
Yes. I'm trying, we got married like 3.5 weeks ago, and I wanted to fit in that dress. So I tried to, for the month after, to eat a bit probably low to no carb. And so it was a lot of protein and veggies, mostly. And I was like, well, why do I go high when I have just a burger and salad? Like, that just doesn't make any sense until I re-listened to the Pro Tip podcast. And I was like, that makes more sense.
I'm glad it's helping. That's really excellent. It's wonderful. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to? I don't want to skip anything or miss anything.
I was just about traveling, because I've traveled a lot. I know a lot of families, especially during the summer, like, hey, we're traveling here, we're traveling there. Like, what do I do? And a lot of people were scared about flying and going through security and stuff. And a lot of parents are like, well, you can go on the side. You don't have to go through that whole like scanning machine. You don't have to put your bag through it. Like, I've never done anything different than anyone else.
Right.
I just went through, just put I have that bag that says all of my diabetes sheet bag. And I put all of my stuff in it, and with also juice boxes pass in the, I go on planes with juice boxes.
Yeah.
When usually people are like, no, you're not allowed to. I'm like, well, it's medical device.
Yeah, no, you can get through TSA with juice boxes. You just have to let them know what they're for. Then they swab them to make sure there's no explosives inside of them. Right.
And that's what they do. The first time, like, oh, you cannot go through that. I'm like, yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Of course I can.
Yeah, good for you.
I was like, well, and because I have my pod and it just bips, I'm like, yep, here are my hands. Just swap them. I know the drill. And my insulin goes through everything. I don't put my insulin in any cold stuff. At home, I have my insulin in the fridge at home.
Right.
But it's only for the past 2 or 3 months. Before that, for the past 3 years, it's been just in a drawer in my room. Well, I never put my insulin in the fridge.
In a temperature controlled building though, right? The building's not super
it was
hot.
around like 70, 72.
Right. And how much Well, how much insulin do you have on hand at a time?
Well, so I get everything from France. I email my endocrinologist every time I do blood tests. I'm like, hey, everything's here. I send you my graphs, my A1C is that much. Everything's fine. I still have some Dexcoms. I need more insulin. And she writes me a prescription. I send it to my mom, who has my insurance card and everything, goes to her next door neighbor, who's the pharmacist, goes to the pharmacy and she's like, well, we need more insulin for Laura. And then she just sends me a box. So I usually get about a year of insulin at a time, and in between 8 and 12 months of pods and Dexcoms at a time.
I see.
So yeah, when I get a box, it's a huge box, and I have 20-ish vials of insulin at once.
Okay. And so when you travel, you only take what you need with you.
Yes.
Right.
I used to be like, well, what if my pod fails? And what if I go in the water and it dies? What if? And I just end up traveling with so much for just a 2-day weekend. Like, it's just crazy. I know that I'm not going to use all of that. I don't need 2 Dexcoms for 2 days.
So you bring a little extra, but you don't bring so much.
Yeah. In my backpack to go to school or to go anywhere, I always have a pen and a couple needles, but I don't have my meter all the time with me. I never have Dexcoms. I never, unless I travel, but on a daily basis, I have just my PDM, a pen, and a couple needles.
Right. Laura, did you just get married?
Yes.
Like in the last couple of months?
Beginning of the month, yes.
Oh, okay. I just watched your wedding video.
Oh.
Like in the background while you were talking, I ran it behind like what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Good for you.
So yeah, we're going through actually switching my insurance right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to see if his insurance would cover the Omnipod 5, which would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
you're thinking of doing that?
Cover everything, because I'm getting married in the US, my French insurance won't work anymore.
Right. Yeah, you're gonna have to go on to his.
Yeah, but so far his insurance has been really great for him whenever he needs to go to the ER or doctor's office.
Okay.
So,
are you working, or are you going to?
I'm a student on a visa, so I cannot walk. I can walk at school, but I won't like 7 or 8 hours a week.
Are you hoping to get some sort of is there a degree you're looking for? Something you're thinking of doing in the future?
Yeah, right now I'm doing a double major in French and geography, and I'm a junior level right now. Okay.
What do you want to do with it? Do you know?
If I use mostly the French, I can do teaching, but I can do, but I don't really want to. I would love to do some translation. I can work in communication, a bunch of stuff like that. If I do geology, I can do GIS, urban planning, and a bunch of different things.
How long till you've got your degrees?
I'm planning on graduating early in December of next year.
Good for you. Congratulations. It's a big thing. How do you handle seeing your parents? Is it just FaceTime and things like that?
My mom came for the first time in the US for the wedding, but in the past, 3.5 years, that was the third time I saw her, and I talked to her on the phone, pretty often, but in real life was the third time. I haven't seen my dad since I left.
Okay.
In February of 2019.
Is that pretty comfortable for you, or do you find it difficult?
Yeah, I've never been that close to my parents.
Okay.
Since the beginning, even before diagnosis, I was just like, I'll do my own thing and I'll be fine.
It does seem like you don't really need any help. So, and
no, well, from them not, but because I know they cannot do anything from where they are.
Yeah, I meant big picture. You just feel like you're okay, and even when you don't know what you're doing, somehow you just seem to come across the answer. So.
Yeah, well, for the big picture, for the small picture, if you ask my husband, he's like, well, he knows when I'm high just by looking at me and looking at what I say and how I do things. And so he works on boats. So he's gone for half of the time. He's gone for a week and home for a week. So when he's on the boat and I'm on the phone with him, he knows when I'm low before my Dexcom.
That's something.
That's how crazy that is.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you for taking the time to record with me.
Well, I was glad to come on.
Yeah, you were terrific. You really were. I'm so glad that you slipped in here on my day off. It was really a nice way to spend an hour.
Good luck in college for Arden.
Oh, thank you. I'll tell her. She's very excited. I think she would have left 2 weeks ago if she could have. So
if she has really good professors like I have, I usually try to make them laugh about diabetes the first day. That's what I said last week to my professors. I went to each and every one of them and I was like, hey, international student, I'm also diabetic. So I'm trying not to pass out in your class, but just so you know, if I do, that's because I'm diabetic. And usually they laugh and like, well, it never happened, so I should be fine. But I just let them know if I'm on my phone, I'm not texting. I'm just making sure I'm still alive.
Yeah. We've been talking about that recently, how she's going to approach professors and explain things. And the school so far has been really terrific about it as well, allowing her to have like a small.
Yeah, I talked to the Office of Disability and they're like, yeah, we've got a couple people that should be like, and I'm not ashamed of being diabetic. I'm not ashamed of, I don't hide it.
Right.
I actually just laugh about it. I'm like, yeah, I have a Dexcom. Well, you don't know it's the Dexcom. It's just a GPS. So my husband knows where I am at all times.
He's keeping track of me. That's all. Oh my God. It's funny. Yeah. All right. Well, Laura, thank you. Hold on for me for a second. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yep. Hey, I want to thank Laura for coming on the show and sharing her story with us. And I want to thank AG1 for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. drinkag1.com/juicebox. Take ownership of your health and get the 5 free travel packs and the year supply of vitamin D when you make your first order at drinkag1.com/juicebox. I also want to thank the Contour Next Gen blood glucose meter and remind you that all of the Contour meters are incredibly accurate and easy to use. And you can learn more about them and make your purchases at contournext.com/juicebox. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, the Bold Beginnings series from the Juicebox Podcast is a terrific place to begin listening. In this series, Jenny Smith and I will go over the questions most often asked at the beginning of type 1. Jenny is a certified diabetes care and education specialist who is also a registered and licensed dietitian, and Jenny has had type 1 diabetes for 35 years. My name is Scott Benner, and I am the father of a child who has type 1 diabetes. Our daughter Arden was diagnosed in 2006 at the age of 2. I believe that at the core of diabetes management, understanding how insulin works and how food and other variables impact your system is of the utmost importance. The Bold Beginnings series will lead you down the path of understanding. The series is made up of 24 episodes, and it begins at episode 698 in your podcast or audio player. I'll list those episodes at the end of this. To listen, you can go to juiceboxpodcast.com, go up to the menu at the top and choose Bold Beginnings, or go into any audio app like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and then find the episodes that correspond with the series. Those lists again are at Juicebox Podcast up in the menu, or if you're in the private Facebook group, in the featured tab. The private Facebook group has over 40,000 members. There are conversations happening right now and 24 hours a day that you would be incredibly interested in. So don't wait. Check out the Bold Beginnings series today and get started on your journey. Episode 698 defines the Bold Beginnings series. 702, honeymooning. 706, adult diagnosis. 711 and 712 go over diabetes terminologies. In episode 715, we talk about fear of insulin. In 719, the 15-15 rule. Episode 723, long-acting insulin. 727, target range. 731, food choices. 735, pre-bolus. 739, carbs. 743, stacking. 747, flexibility. In episode 751, we discuss school. In episode 755, exercise. 759, guilt, fears, hope, and expectations. In episode 763, of the Bold Beginnings series. We talk about community, 772 journaling, 776 technology and medical supplies, episode 780 treating low blood glucose, episode 784 dealing with insurance, 788 talking to your family, and episode 805 illness and ketone management. Check it out. It will change your life.